Malaysia just became the first country on earth to stand up to Donald Trump's trade bullying, and what happened next will absolutely shock you. While the rest of the world bowed down, Malaysia's Trade Minister Johari Abdul Ghani dropped a bombshell on March 15, 2026. He declared the US-Malaysia trade agreement null and void, not suspended, not under review, completely dead. The reason? On February 20, 2026, the US Supreme Court ruled that Trump's global tariffs were unconstitutional. Malaysia's argument was brutally simple. If the threat that forced them to sign was illegal, then the agreement signed under that threat is, well, worthless. To truly understand why Malaysia was pushed to the brink, and why its leaders were so furious, you have to look at the chain of events that unfolded after the United States unleashed its sweeping new tariffs. This wasn't just a matter of economic policy. It was a direct hit to Malaysia's national pride, its economy, and the livelihoods of millions of its citizens. The government's outrage wasn't just political theater, it was a genuine reaction to a situation that threatened to upend the country's future. The turning point came when President Trump announced what he called the Liberation Day tariffs, a sweeping set of import taxes that sent shockwaves through the global economy. For Malaysia, the impact was immediate and devastating. Suddenly nearly half of all Malaysian exports to the United States were slapped with a staggering 47% tax. Imagine being a business owner in Penang or Johor, waking up to find that your products, electronics, palm oil, machinery, were now almost 50% more expensive for American buyers. The phones in government offices rang off the hook as exporters, factory owners, and workers demanded answers. The news dominated headlines, and the sense of crisis was palpable across the country. The Malaysian government scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were called, and top officials flew to Washington for urgent negotiations. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Malaysia's economy is deeply intertwined with global trade, and the United States is one of its biggest partners. With billions of dollars and countless jobs on the line, the pressure was immense. For weeks, negotiators worked around the clock, trying to find a way out of the crisis. There were tense moments, heated arguments, and more than a few sleepless nights. In the end, Malaysia managed to secure a deal last October that lowered the tariffs from 47% to 19%. On paper, it looked like a victory, but the reality was far more complicated and far more painful. The price of this so-called deal was staggering. Malaysia agreed to spend an eye-watering $240 billion over the next 10 years buying American products. That's more than the country spends on healthcare and education combined. The government promised to purchase everything from airplanes and cars to software and agricultural goods, regardless of whether Malaysian companies actually needed them. For many, it felt like being forced to buy a ticket to your own economic hardship. The deal was hailed by some as a necessary compromise, but for most Malaysians, it was a bitter pill to swallow. But that wasn't all. As part of the agreement, Malaysia also committed to investing a jaw-dropping $700 billion in U.S. infrastructure and development projects. This meant pouring Malaysian capital into American roads, bridges, factories, and tech startups, money that could have been used to build schools, hospitals, and new industries back home. The scale of the investment was unprecedented, and it left many Malaysians wondering if their country had been strong-armed into bankrolling America's future at the expense of their own. In the end, what was signed wasn't really a trade deal in the traditional sense. It was more like a surrender document, a symbol of how smaller nations can be forced to make impossible choices when caught in the crossfire of global power struggles. For Malaysia, the crushing cost wasn't just measured in dollars and cents, but in lost opportunities, shaken confidence, and a lingering sense of injustice that would shape its politics and economy for years to come. But then came the Supreme Court ruling. Malaysia realized it could save billions by walking away. Trump had warned that any country trying tricks would face much higher tariffs, but Malaysia called his bluff anyway. Just when it seemed like the story had reached its climax, an unexpected development sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and financial markets alike. Only 24 hours after Malaysia's trade ministry made its bold announcement, the entire narrative was flipped on its head. The world watched in disbelief as the ministry abruptly reversed its position, retracting statements that had only just begun to ripple across global headlines. The sudden about-face left journalists scrambling for answers, investors on edge, and international observers questioning what could possibly have triggered such a dramatic U-turn. The press conference, which had initially seemed so definitive, was now shrouded in confusion and speculation. In a carefully worded statement, officials claimed that the minister had simply misspoken. According to the ministry, no formal cancellation had ever been issued, and any suggestion to the contrary was merely a misunderstanding. The official documents, they insisted, remained unchanged. This explanation, however, did little to quell the growing sense of intrigue. Was this truly a case of miscommunication, or was something more complex unfolding behind the scenes? The language of the press release was measured, almost evasive, as if designed to obscure more than it revealed. Analysts and reporters pored over every word, searching for hidden meanings and subtle clues. The real question on everyone's mind was, what had happened behind closed doors in those tense high-stakes hours? Who had called whom? What deals were struck? And what threats were made? In the corridors of power, urgent meetings were convened. Senior officials huddled in private, weighing the risks and rewards of every possible move. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, as political leaders and business executives alike tried to anticipate the next twist in this rapidly evolving saga. Rumors swirled about intense negotiations, last-minute interventions, and the possibility of international pressure being brought to bear on Malaysia's decision-makers. As the dust began to settle, one crucial detail emerged. Washington had quietly reminded Kuala Lumpur of the ongoing Section 301 investigation, a sweeping probe targeting the trade practices of 60 countries, Malaysia among them. This investigation, launched by the United States, carried the threat of severe economic consequences, including tariffs and other punitive measures. For Malaysia, the stakes could not have been higher. The mere mention of Section 301 was enough to send a clear message. The U.S. was prepared to defend its interests, and any unilateral moves by Malaysia would not go unanswered. The diplomatic chess game had entered a new, more dangerous phase. Yet, Malaysia was not without leverage of its own. Beneath its soil lay some of the world's most sought-after rare earth minerals, resources essential to the manufacturing of advanced technologies, including the U.S. military's cutting-edge F-35 fighter jets. These minerals are not easily sourced elsewhere, and their supply is critical to the defense and technology sectors of major world powers. By controlling access to these rare earths, Malaysia held a powerful bargaining chip. The government knew that any disruption in supply could have far-reaching consequences, not just for the U.S., but for the entire global supply chain. In this high-stakes standoff, both sides were acutely aware of the cards they held, and neither was willing to fold. In the wake of this unprecedented move, the world watched as Malaysia stepped onto the global stage with a boldness rarely seen in international trade politics. Whether the deal ultimately stands or falls, one thing is clear: Malaysia did something no other nation dared to do. They publicly challenged the trade regime of then-President Donald Trump. This was not just a negotiation behind closed doors, nor a quiet protest in diplomatic circles. It was a direct, public confrontation that sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Washington, D.C., and reverberated across the globe. For years, many countries had quietly grumbled about the aggressive trade tactics of the Trump administration, but few were willing to risk the consequences of open defiance. Malaysia, however, decided that the stakes were too high to remain silent. Their leaders stood before the world's cameras, articulated their position with clarity, and demanded fair treatment for their people and their economy. This act of courage forced not only the United States, but also other nations, to reconsider their own strategies and alliances. Suddenly, the balance of power in international trade negotiations seemed less certain, and the possibility of a new, more equitable order began to emerge. The impact of Malaysia's stand was immediate and far-reaching. News of their bold move spread rapidly, not just through traditional media but across every digital platform imaginable. People everywhere began to share updates, analyses, and opinions, sparking conversations in homes, offices, and online communities. It wasn't just politicians and economists who were recalculating their positions. Ordinary citizens, business owners, and students were suddenly engaged in debates about trade, sovereignty, and the future of global cooperation. This is where you come in. The power to shape the narrative and keep the world informed doesn't just rest with governments or news outlets. It rests with each of us. By sharing this video, you help ensure that the story of Malaysia's courage and the lessons it offers reach as many people as possible. Don't let this moment pass unnoticed. Share it with your family, your friends, your colleagues, and everyone you know. Make sure you post it in all your WhatsApp groups, so that even those who might not follow international news, can understand the significance of what's happening. And don't stop there. Take the conversation to your Facebook groups, your Telegram channels, and every other community you're part of. The more people who are informed, the stronger our collective voice becomes. While you're at it, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you never miss an update on stories that matter. Just hit the red button below and join a growing community of people who care about truth, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. Together, we can keep the world informed, inspired, and ready to take action. Your voice matters. Let's make it heard.